Welcome to the Business Performance Podcast, where we feature expert thought leaders and cover their best strategies, stories, and advice that you can use to successfully mature your own business performance. Now, here is your host, business coach, Henry Schneider. Hello, everyone. This is Henry Schneider with the Business Performance Podcast, and today it's my pleasure to speak with Brad Hollister of SwanLeap, which is he's a hyper-growth technology founder specializing in supply chain digitalization and AI. And they've been on the Inc. 5000 list. They were number one in 2019. They're still on the list in 2018, still on the list here in 2019. And they've seen some phenomenal growth over the 5 years, roughly about 6,400% growth, which is really amazing. So, Brad, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Henry.
Okay, so Brad, to kind of set the stage for everybody who listens, could you please briefly describe Swanly, your customers, and the types of products and services that you provide?
Yes, SwanLeap helps people to ship better. We transform the way companies make shipments, how they make decisions, how they interact with their customers, how they interact with their vendors, and we really breathe a life blood, if you will, organization, so they connect with everything outside the four walls, all the carriers, vendors, suppliers, customers, and everything. It helps the system helps the company to see everything in all angles of their company. So an example, like the way decisions are made today in most shipping companies is people make rules and then they do basically a glorified Excel filter of if it hits this rule, then do this. And we do that all with AI.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. So are you using like RPAs, or are you using more of just thought trees and things?
Well, really, it comes down to three basic elements that we do better than anybody: visibility, speed, and control. And we're in an era that visibility is key into what's happening, not only in your warehouse, but externally. The speed to be able to make changes and drive changes, like warehouses shut down, burn down, flooded out. We've seen all kinds of crazy things, right? Natural disasters. But then that control to be able to modify things quickly. I don't know many supply chains that could pivot from an earthquake or a natural disaster really quickly and start diverting inventory from different warehouses. That's not supply chain as defined by modern standards. And that's the future, but it's not where most companies are today.
Today with the COVID-19 shutdown, basically, the only supply chain anybody's worried about is the medical equipment stuff. So everybody else is shut down.
Yeah, actually, I would argue with that. We're seeing some crazy things and I say crazy because I never would have thought, right? We're seeing a furniture manufacturer that all of a sudden needs to get geared up for e-commerce because all of their customers, which are furniture stores, are closed. But clients are going to the furniture stores' websites and ordering things.
Okay.
And now the manufacturer is now in the e-commerce business because they have to do final mile delivery to their customer's customer. Never would have thought that. I know there's a surfwear brand that we were really close to implementing a new system. And they sell primarily to not only surf stores, but big box like Macy's and Nordstrom and stuff like that. And I would have thought they were, shut down as well. Like, who needs board shorts right now, right? No, their e-commerce is exploding. And it's just at an all-time peak because their customers are not going to Macy's and Nordstrom. They're going into the website. So it is a very strange time. And I think it's important to note that as soon as you think you have anything figured out in this current state of the economy, it's going to probably surprise you. The consumer still is reigning as king, and it'll be interesting to just continue to support the direction that the consumers take us. I would have thought the same thing about the medical industry, though. We just think something very different than I expected.
Well, I guess if everybody's sitting at home, there's what else you got to do besides watch Netflix and shop online? So,
yeah, it's definitely a surprise to me on what what the economy is kind of chugging along silently.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I guess for finished goods, that's true. But I'm thinking more in terms of like raw materials.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
No, yeah, there was a really weird elastic event that happened, and I say elastic because it was like, in my mind, like that, right? Like a snap. We're feeling the effects right now for a lot of companies on the original outbreak of the pandemic out of China and everything that shut down in China. Now all those boats and containers are still on the water because that was a month ago or whatever. So it's this weird elastic spot we're in as a world because a lot of companies have shut down only because they couldn't get raw materials.
Yeah.
And so we have a client that way that, it looks, they did shut down because of the COVID-19, but they also shut down because they really had no raw materials to work with. So it was an easy decision.
Yeah. And so when you bring up good points that too, that, now, sometime in the near future, hopefully we will be able to restart, and you're going to have to try to figure out how do you restart the supply chain. Who comes up first, who comes up second, who comes up third. So then everything will have a smooth transition to get back into business.
Yeah, a lot of that's going to happen. I mean, I think a lot of, thought see a resurgence in cases. I mean, that's going to be a wild card that will be interesting to watch. But who knows if their numbers are even accurate. Yeah. Those are all things I think that when you start talking about supply chain and from the raw material side, I think we're going to get in a situation where we sell out of everything we have here.
Yeah, and I guess what they're going to do, because we're so vulnerable to China, we're probably going to start seeing, see how much we can do domestically now too, and ship operations back. But that's going to take a long time to come back up too. So,
yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how these, warehouses continue, and a lot of companies changing, right, to listen to what the consumers are asking for. Definitely a very interesting time in our history right now in watching the response of companies. I mean, are the food companies slowing down? I mean, I read a lot of conflicting information in the food industry about we're all at home consuming more than ever, but farmers are dumping milk. I don't know. It's really, each of these are interesting, circumstances.
I guess, it's, it all depends upon how long the shutdown lasts. I mean, eventually it'll stop everything, but that right now things are still flowing. So,
yeah.
Okay, so Brad, what I'd like to do is now explore just a slightly different topic. I always like to ask all my guests about quality, and quality is a fairly broad term. So what does quality mean to you in terms of supply chain and digitalization and AI?
To me, the most important aspect of a supply chain initiative, strategy, technical infrastructure is flexibility, because you have to be able to plan for the things you didn't plan for. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that is not how supply chains work. That's not how major ERPs work. This is why ERP projects go on for years. This is why people buy software and then they end up canning it, because you can plop down a whole list of really well-recognized logos, but if it doesn't do what you need it to do and the promise that you've made to your customers, the software you just bought is worthless. And so that's what we see. We see a lot of companies that have bought something, and within a very short amount of time, they realize they made a mistake. Now, can you imagine going to your boss and telling them that? But you're probably not going to, or you're going to write out your decision and just eat it and live with it. So we see that, and I think that is really that flexibility to change the way a system flows, the way maybe these workers in this location need to do things differently than these, under even the same company. That's important. And the idea that it's your technology strategy, specifically around technology, should be a journey, not a destination. And so often people do it wrong. They're going to buy something for today and it's already old by the time the wrapper comes off it. I mean, it's just a ridiculous notion in how we buy software in our industry.
Yeah, I know. I had a client a couple of years ago that bought a package for $300,000 and never used it. And I'm just like, wow, I wish I had that kind of money to throw around.
Who knows what the percentage of that Fortune 500s have that same story? I would say it's got to be a very high percentage because we see it a lot too. We just got a company that bought our system and decided they preferred to go back to Microsoft Excel.
Oh boy.
Because they didn't want to do the full integration, so they didn't get the benefit of the automation. And they really had a limited view over how to diversify your carrier pool. So if you only had one carrier, I mean, for example, you would never need to have a decision-making software on how to make a shipment.
Right.
And if all your tracking was on one website, you wouldn't probably need to have a software. But you're probably paying a 45% premium through the inefficiencies that you're using at that carrier. So you don't buy all your groceries at a convenience store. I mean, and that's kind of my I think what we see. So yeah, it's definitely interesting how every company views it. Views the technology differently.
Right. Yeah, and usually I guess the selling feature is that you're looking at found money because you're going to improve operations, you're going to reduce it by that much, and the cost of your product is way underneath that, so they're still making money.
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually present an ROI case that is, relative to the upfront implementation, right? Like, if we have to set up your system and schedule your users and the permissions and the locations and your products and addresses, we got to set it up. Okay, we got to get it connected to your carriers, test it. Okay, so it might cost us, a week of work to do that, right? So that's the investment. But the point is, the return usually in this day and age, you can get a return within days, maybe the same day. Maybe it's a 1-day payback of your investment, and it's so simple. And so you're literally, winning like a slot machine every day you come, and that your supply chain's operating efficiently. Whereas the other hand, if it's not, you have like a leak in your bank account and money's just falling out of it. And so it definitely should be a no-brainer for a lot of companies. The cultures don't let them make it a no-brainer.
Right, yeah. To build on what you're saying, they're actually internally hemorrhaging and don't realize it. And they're still taking money to the bank, they're still profitable, but they're losing a lot.
Yeah, and it's the amount of money they're paying for that inefficiency should be looked at. Like, it's not that a solution or a new initiative, new project is costing you money. It's plugging the hole.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, what are some of the perceived obstacles out there that you see that people have to get over that hump to realize, hey, they need to use a different disruptive tool to be more flexible?
I think they have. There's a lot. That's probably a whole podcast in and of itself. Honestly, it's first looking at this, going, okay, I've done the best job I can. Is there a better way? Does anybody else have any ideas of how we can make this better? I think if a company took that approach, their supply chain would be fixed quickly. Do the best you can, and then realize that you still might not be perfect. And everybody would agree with the fact they're not perfect, but no one would look at themselves in the mirror and say they did not a good job on this thing. And so I think some of the we've had one customer over the time that said, hey, listen, if you can save us money, great, let's do it. Most of them are like, no, you don't understand. We have to do this special thing. We have to do this special thing. And they start to create all these excuses like we talked about earlier, like about it's easy to find an excuse to not change, but the truth of the matter is the data should speak for itself. And then you should be looking at implementing, a path to get to your goals of what your supply chain can do, as opposed to looking at this as one scary project that is so big in your mind that you can't possibly ever start it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you probably hear people say, oh, we're unique. You don't understand us at all. It's like we have a special way of doing things.
Everyone says that, and it's like, yeah, I know. I don't look at it as anybody being unique as much as it is we have to understand your requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we understand your requirements. Yes, we take all your requirements into consideration, but you're not special. You still have to make stuff and get out the door. We just have to understand what the requirements are to do that.
Yeah. And you need to have people or senior level management and executives that are willing to let you try experiments and fail fast, learn, pivot, and improve, because that's the only way you're going to actually grow. If you take that slow and steady approach, you're going to run into big trouble.
Yeah, the what we recommend when someone's looking to do, enter a journey to improve and optimize the supply chain, not just for today, but for 10 years from now, is to look to replicate. First of all, rip out the foundation that you have. You might have multiple systems, you might have multiple strategies in different markets, even different divisions of companies, and try to replace that with one foundation that's modern, that's going to be flexible going forward, and just replace what you have today as step one. That should be step one. Now you've built something that you can build on, right? You've put in something in place that can be built upon, and look for future improvements. And then suddenly adding something like truckload tracking, or something like automating multi-stop deliveries, or introducing additional freight forwarders or regional parcel carriers. I mean, that stuff starts to become quite simple and less disruptive to your company when you have the right foundation.
Sure. Okay, so now, could you share a story of how you helped a client to overcome obstacles and be successful?
Yeah, I have a really a story that was surprised me, and we were told that we saved this company from going out of business. We looked at some data from them, and they really were not doing a good job, despite their head of supply chain told me otherwise. Of course, I called them one day and he retired. And so I showed the COO what we were trying to present to this person. And we put our solution in place, and the efficiencies that AI delivered was a 43% cost reduction. I was thrilled. I didn't think it'd be that high, right? It was like, we were thinking 25% would be a winning project. So long story short, they called us about 2 weeks later and said that they had to let us go. They had to fire us because we were costing them a ton of money. And I'm scratching my head at this point. I'm like, what are you talking about? We did an awesome job for you, and now you have all this visibility and control. And so what happened was they were marking up their freight 35%.
Oh.
And now we've reduced that cost basis so far that they're hardly making anything on freight, and they were depending on that, that $10 million in revenue that they were marking up freight on, or making freight markup. So we said, after a few minutes of thought, I'm like, this isn't so bad. What we can do is we can just return back the old logic and mark up the old logic, and that way, you could charge your customers the same as you've been charging them, and then you guys get to just pay the carriers, the difference. And what we found is that at the end of it, it turned out to be an 86% markup on freight that this customer was charging to their clients at no additional cost than what they have done for the previous years. So it was a really cool story and a cool project. And companies in the printing business. So you can imagine those margins and those customers are hard to come by. People that want to print out like 100,000 postcards and stuff like that. It's got to be a tough industry. Margins are razor thin, and we made a lot of difference. And they confessed to us later that they actually would quote things at cost to win the business, knowing they're going to make the money on the freight.
Cool. So if you could distill that down to 25 words or less, what would be the moral of the story? Visibility,
speed, and control. And nothing else matters in our space at all. They need the visibility to understand the problem. They need that means visibility from they were paying too much and visibility into what they were charging their clients. They need the speed to implement meaningful change, and they needed the ability, the control, so that they could ratchet that up or down by client, which is where they eventually got to. So visibility, speed, and control.
Okay, so now let's kind of shift gears a bit and focus on you personally. Can you spend a few moments talking about your backstory and how you got involved and with freight to begin with and became now super in supply chain with digitization and AI?
Yeah, the first job out of college I took was in the airline industry, and so I was importing and exporting airplane parts for a company,
Mm-hmm.
and then after the Argentinian banks collapsed, Latin America, which is where my territory was pretty devastated, and then it was the 1-2 punch not long after that with 9/11. So I went to friends of mine were companies to help reduce station costs, and I'm like, this is a pretty easy sell that I want to help people save money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went into that, and after working with friends only turns out one way. So I decided that I need to go and learn everything I can, and in the industry, so I have the the understanding of carrier networks, and went to work for a publicly traded trucking company in the mid late 2000s. The economy took the tank, and the big tank, before a little before 2008 into 2008.
Yeah.
So they cut a lot of their strategy on sales, and I went into freight brokerage. Once I saw how freight brokerage really operated, I realized there has to be a better way, and started out on a tech journey to, getting into that. We made a marketplace first in 2009, 2010. The marketplace was not what the industry wanted back then. I still think we're a pretty sizable leap away from going to pure marketplace. And yet there's a lot of marketplaces emerging in our industry. And then we decided to reel that in a little bit and just go to straight automation in supply chain decision making. So we can plug into a system, all the orders come into us, and then we will hit every single possible option, or request every single possible carrier from an option perspective, return back all of the options into one place, make the recommendation based on transit time and cost. That's what we did early on, and we did it for parcel, moved into truckload and intermodal, and then into ocean now. And as everyone knows, ocean is not such a dynamic environment. I think maybe that's a generation away, but definitely today is not a static buying process. Excuse me, not a dynamic buying process. It's very static.
So what do you think now the future is going to hold here with once the COVID-19 shutdown is over, in terms of what the demand for your services is going to look like?
Well, I think we got a little road ahead of us in terms of this economy, and we have to be optimistic, of course, because we don't win if the economy is bad either. No one does. But it also helps to bring awareness to inefficiencies. So I'm excited for that opportunity to be showing companies what we've been trying to, what we've been trying to show them for the last 6 years, and having an audience that actually wants to do something. I mean, we can show a company $10 million in savings, and we never get a call back, because to the point, it's like, hey, well, it's just cost of doing business. I think I'm excited for our company specifically is very well positioned in this environment. We're collaborating with digital tools. Our system is all cloud-based. There's nothing on-premise. We're very well positioned for this kind of environment, and for businesses to thrive or die. And that's going to be, I think, to our testament of all the hard work we put into really automating so much. I think that there's going to be a lot of technology companies that won't be able to keep up with the changing needs of the consumer, and that's kind of post-COVID.
Yeah.
So I want to answer the question about COVID, but then specifically, the next 24 to 48 months is going to bring a really difficult time, when you have these solutions that have still had an audience for people saying, I want something on cloud, on premise, I don't want to be in the cloud. Now saying, I want something that's only in the cloud, I don't want to be on premise. It's interesting, in our short time, the cloud has gotten infinitely more secure than on premise, and it used to be the other way. So the people that are demanding solutions of yesteryear, including on premise, are retiring. Companies that are buying solutions that aren't connected live to carriers, that are going to accept table-based decision making, those buyers aren't going to be out there much longer. And the next generation's coming in. There's also a really interesting change coming in how freight has been purchased in the past. There used to be a lot of loyalty and a lot of importance on the relationship with the carrier. We hear it all the time. We have a relationship. And I like to ask people, like, do you mean like the relationship where they pick up your stuff and you pay the bill? Or is there more to the relationship that your supply chain needs? And I think that those days, I mean, I just think about my own kids texting me within the house, right? They're in my house. They're sending me a text message. The idea that a relationship, just because there's a lot of nice talk over a lunch or sending jokes back and forth or going to a ball game, those days are kind of going to be over on how decisions are made, major decisions. We just met with a major company that had about a $30 million ocean spend. They had 4 providers. And I think, geez, who decided 4 was the number, right? I mean, the idea that we have all that data to make a decision and say, this is our decision for the next 2 years is going to be challenged for sure. And suddenly you're not just going to be able to have your buddy keep buying from you for 10 years the way it has been forever. It's going to be with every supplier relationship. It's going to be like, what did you do for me yesterday? You know, to make our relationship better today. So, you know, you might find out on Monday morning that you're no longer a carrier there because a new carrier came in. And that's the truth of, you know, supplier loyalty. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it flushes out inefficiencies that talk relationships smoothed over really well.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, basically what you have to do is you got to do vendor performance evaluations. You know, how good is each of those suppliers? Are they really meeting your needs, or is that your brother-in-law's company?
Yeah, suppliers is one thing. I mean, we have amazing metrics on supplier performance, but also the carriers bringing the goods in and out, and how the carrier is an extension of a company when it comes down to it, right? If you or I are a consumer and that thing doesn't get there before I leave for my vacation, I have a negative view of your company because you didn't get it to me on time. So the point is, like, we need to constantly be having metrics that evaluates who's best for our business, not just from supplier perspective, but from a carrier perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let me ask a slightly different question now. Thinking about your whole life in general, could you share an experience you had early on that still affects how you approach business today?
Yeah, you know, I think it's important that when you leave the office, to, you know, have in your mind like a reflection of, did I do everything I could today, the best I could, right? And what would I do different? And that's not an easy outlook on life, like to look at yourself and say, you did 10 really good things, you did 1 bad thing, you made a mistake, I wish I would have had that back. And a lot of folks really don't like to go to that comfortable place of looking in the mirror going, what could I have done different, or how could I be better? That's kind of my makeup. I make tons of mistakes, right? I make mistakes with how I handle situations. We just gave a client presentation yesterday, and I made mistakes in it, right? I actually went in to look at. Now we're going to have a meeting before we give a presentation and go through, you know what I mean? Because we didn't do that. We knew it was done. We knew it was good. Presented, it was a mess. Yeah. And I think when you start to look at like all of the things that you can do better today to better yourself, that could be, you know, physically, mentally, you know, work related, family related. I mean, it's important to really look at yourself through through the mirror and take the bullshit filter off and say, okay, where am I weakest? What am I worst at? And fix it, work on it, or put people around you that can do that better than you. And that's my makeup. And I think sometimes it's tough for people to understand that I really need people around me that are going to make me better. And I need people to be candid with me so that I can be better and not just look at what we did well. Who cares what we did well? We expected to do everything well. What did we do bad that we expected, that we thought was good?
So I think you're kind of anticipating on my questions, but so thinking back, how SwanLeap is working, if you had to start things all over from scratch today, what would you do the same and what would you do differently?
We got really lucky. We took on some just family investment money from one of the former governors of Wisconsin. And he set us up so well with legal and accounting guidance out of the gate. I think that in talking to businesses, usually that's the biggest problem is legal guidance in the early days, and because you don't have money when you're a bootstrap startup. So we got lucky, but yet also made a good decision to bring someone into business with us that could advise us from the beginning really well. I think where we're at now, I hesitated a lot to get out of certain functions of our company because I wanted to make sure that they were done right. And now I'm feeling like a liberation, of getting out of decisions for the most part, a lot of decisions. And, trying to coach people that maybe made some mistakes in their decision, as long as they're trying to do the right thing and they're open to feedback, that's a winning strategy. But probably the most important for me was understanding that for the engine and motor that I have, there's a certain type of personality or, whatever gusto, makeup, whatever's inside of us, right? That makes me excel more or makes me encouraged to work with them more than others. And just because the management team, or the culture or something, any of those different things, right? You have to make sure that the people and the candidates that you have fit. Now, it is important more than ever to embrace diversity, and diversity, not just skin color, but diversity of ideas and thought. And it's important, right? But at the same time, I really, really enjoy people that have a quest for life, that are looking for something that are looking to improve themselves by Monday morning. That could be reading books. It could be learning a language. It could be trying to reach some kind of goal. And are we on this planet to just get through the next week? Or are we here to say, how do we get better? Yeah. And that's not just work. That has to be well-rounded for it to be authentic. So to me, that's the biggest thing is we had a lot of really good people here, including friends of mine that worked here, everything that just didn't fit what we needed them to fit, in the way that we needed to work. And since I realized that we need people that have a quest for life in all areas of their life, personal and professional, that was a big thing for me. It allows us to really have the right team that is going to be able to keep up with this pace, because I'll tell you what, it's not easy. We've lost great people because we didn't have structure with this kind of growth. We needed people to kind of be, accountable to themselves and try to do what's best. And we had great people that are like, well, you never told me to do that. Yeah, I know, but the garbage is overflowing. Why didn't you pick it up?
Yeah, I know, but you've experienced phenomenal growth, and that comes with lots of growing pains, and you've got to be able to have the right people there to grow with you.
Yeah, and I really enjoy trying to push people to do more than what their mind has convinced them they can do. Not just work, again, not just work. And not everyone wants that. Not everyone is responsive to going outside their comfort zone, and that is completely okay. It just doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for me, right?
Right. So here's a tough question for you. What are your top 3 concerns that keep you awake at night about the company?
I've been concerned that we don't remind the clients of the value that we bring all the time. I think about like a retailer sometimes, like if they have like their, they have on the receipt like the huge number of how much you saved. That was a moment that I realized that like we need to reinstill the value, because my biggest fear is that all of a sudden a new leadership team comes in and doesn't see the value of what we do for them. That has been like, that has been my stated business fear for 4 or 5 years now. We've gotten really, really good at that through a lot of different ways, and so that's not so much a fear. I think right now, I really feel like we have a lot of people that are in all the places. I'm scrambling in my mind to find a fear.
Wow.
For a while in the fourth quarter, my fear was getting our system hacked.
Oh.
So that was it's happened all over our industry, and it's not, a lot of it's not publicized. It's safer to say everyone's been hacked than to say no one's been hacked.
Yeah.
Okay, so that became my manic project from like October to December, and it's one of those things that right when you say, okay, we're not hackable, is when you're going to get hacked.
Yeah.
So we've taken tremendous precaution with multi-factor authentication. Like if you log into our servers, it texts one of 4 people here that has to let someone in. I mean, we've gotten really good. Certainly we're not done reinventing ourselves there. But I think about those kind of, I don't have like a long-term fear that's not fixed in our company. I have temporary potential risks I identify to our business, and I concentrate on those as my, out of fear, This is a potential risk to our business that I have to eliminate. And that's how I go. So right now, I really don't feel that we have one. I'm sure I'll think of things soon that is my new hot button.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm really passionate about keeping everyone in our company on payroll. If our business does take a dip, it hasn't so far, thank goodness. But I really, really want to get through this period, and I'm thinking it's going to be longer than we ever imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Preparing for the worst case scenario without losing anybody in our company. I think everyone has contributed to getting it to this point, and I'd hate to lose them, as a result of us not trying everything we can.
Okay, Brad, we're rapidly running out of time, so I really appreciate talking with you today and sharing the information you have. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I would encourage people to reach out on LinkedIn. Follow us on social media, of course, Twitter. But I'd also welcome the audience to shoot me a personal email to bhollister@swanleap.com.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, Brad, it's just been a fascinating discussion. This is something we could just go on and on and on, but I want to honor your time. So again, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Business Performance Podcast with your business coach, Henry Schneider. For more episodes and business strategies, please visit welcome.ppqc.net/blog. That's www.welcome.ppqc.net/blog. And remember to subscribe so you can get the latest episodes. Thank you.